Hi, it's Sunday. Welcome to Backstage at Upstart. I've dragged Rowan Harrison-O'Neill out early in the really massive heat to talk about Falstaff. This is Michelle Denise Norton, who's you should know by now. I'm a bit goofy about intros and endings. We just listened to 5 minutes of Orson Welles, which I will probably post in the comments, or you can check out my Twitter at Midnight Maverick. Just take out the I at the beginning. About Falstaff and what kind of a character he was, because Orson Welles did this amazing movie. Orson Welles is a phenomenal director of movies. Some of them are kind of iffy, and Citizen Kane is hard to get through, but Chimes at Midnight is the story of Falstaff, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I think I've mentioned it before, so if you have a chance to watch it, do, because I saw it one late night on my birthday with my brother, and it kind of got me in the Henry V mood. So, hi, Rowan. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
So, what did you think about Orson Welles on Falstaff?
That was really interesting because you said something the other night that really got me thinking about Falstaff. You said Falstaff is a survivor. And when I first looked at Falstaff at face value, I thought, just like Orson said, he's a clown.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't taking him seriously at first. Just at face value, my first impression of Falstaff wasn't serious at all. And I never thought he was a bad guy inherently at all, but I never took into consideration that he is a good guy.
Yeah,
you know?
it was interesting when Orson Welles said that, because you don't think about it, but then you think about all the people who Falstaff has attracted.
Exactly.
And there must be something to him.
Right. And I mean, just the way that he handles situations, I mean, he's not vindictive. He's not, at the end of this play, like, he comes out of it and he's like, egg on my face. I can't win them all,
Yeah.
And there's something that's good. That's a really good trait. It's almost admirable.
Yes. Like Pistol kind of threatens him, and he's like, and then when Pistol apologizes, he goes back to starters, and Pistol doesn't get over it.
Exactly. He's not one to hold on to resentments, it seems. Like, he's just, let's let bygones be bygones. Let's just continue.
Yeah.
As long as I have a place to sleep, we're good.
As long as I come out at the end of the day with a roof over my head.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, like with Bardoff, he's got to get rid of somebody, but he gets him a job.
There you go.
And where Orson Welles says, there's a complicated part where Orson Welles, first he says Falstaff has a certain innocence, and then he turns it into it's about the innocence of Camelot, England. Mm-hmm. But Falstaff's innocence actually kind of makes the fact that the wives can trick him 3 times work for me.
Yes, I agree with that as well, because I was also thinking, I was like, how is Falstaff in this situation? Because, like, obviously the money's great, beautiful women are great, but 3 times, that's pushing it. 3 times, and I was trying to figure that out. I was like, what keeps him coming back? And it has to be that sense of, maybe it will work out this time.
I think it's also, I know people laugh at the Myers-Briggs stuff, or some people don't believe it, but there's the S people who do things and the N people who, think.
Right.
And, I mean, if you're someone who's doing stuff and people say, well, come over, or let's go in the woods. And, Falstaff, I always find it fascinating how after he's been pretty much humiliated twice, he's so cheerful.
Right.
In the last scene, when he's out in the woods, it's like suddenly there's a thrill again. Because, I think it's kind of maybe the hunt for him, or...
Yeah, it could be that, or, if you look at it, he's a survivor, he's a war hero, he's seen people die, and maybe it's, I have to live for myself today and get out of it what I can, because, I don't know what's going to happen next. He's literally faced death face to face, and, he's still alive, so he could take it, and milk it for all it's worth, like, what, this could work. This, on one hand, I could be tricked again. I didn't like being, almost drowned, but at the same time, here I am having a drink. I made it out, so let's try again.
People are flirting with me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay.
Yeah.
They're not tarring and feathering me and run me out of town yet. Actually, they don't do that. Yeah, because I really find it fascinating how, he comes in the last 5-5 and it's like he's all vigor again. He's got such a fast recovery period. Yeah. It's impressive.
It's crazy.
Falstaff in England, they bounce back. Oh, so what is it like to play Falstaff? That's one of the things that Rowan and I were talking about before we did this, is that with Upstart Arts and previously with Tut, for me, casting people is a matter of voices and other things, whereas some companies put out a casting list that will say Falstaff, 50 to 60-year-old male, or the wives, 40s, right? 40s women, and, I find that I suppose if you put that out there, you get possibly a pool of people, but I like to work with people who are willing to adapt. So I think of it much more as an ensemble sort of a thing where you can walk in and get cast in any part. And Rowan's previously done Adriana for us. I was amazed. A lot of people remember you as Adriana.
I'm surprised by that too.
And she's done Puck, which is one of my favorite characters. I love Rowan's Puck because it was very feral. And then Trinculo in Taming of the Shrew, which was kind of fascinating.
That was an interesting one.
Yeah, that's an interesting part. So what's it like to come in and not know if you're going to be a male or female character, or just kind of throw it up to the winds?
Well, what's interesting, I think I've played, quote, male with you more than anything. Adriana was my first female role. And honestly, when I read Shakespeare, not to get political, I don't see gender in the characters. And I don't know if that's because I started with you when I was really little, playing the sea captain. But I
had that role too. That was like the first Shakespeare I ever acted in was the same, yeah.
But I sense them more on attitude. So there's masculine and there's feminine characters, but I don't really see a gender in them. So you could tell me, you're playing this part or you're playing this part, and I'm going to go by their motives more so than their gender. I mean, that being said, when I have to pitch woo, I'm definitely not good at it. Getting in touch with my feminine side, I'm a little uncomfortable with. It doesn't come as natural to me as it is playing a more masculine, who gives a damn,
The more traditional masculine.
Yeah.
They're not emotional.
Exactly.
Yeah, I find it's more what actors bring to parts. You can do a lot with costumes, honestly. I mean, you don't have to. I know there's some people who do, and Ashley, we should talk to Ashley about this, the switching the genders of the characters, because she did that with Iago for her doctoral or master's thing. But for me, I just find that if you let the actor, who happens to be a woman, or teenage girl, or even small girl, although Annika prefers to be in pink even if she's playing a guy, which is great.
Which is cool.
And we do that, because why not? Yeah. Pink is an everybody color. My dad's favorite color is pink, and he was a captain of his state championship football team. But so I tend, the first time I ever really took a big chance like that was the first time I did 12th Night, which is one of my perfect nights of theater, one of the dress rehearsals, and there was just nobody who captured Orsino's melancholy, because I find that that's a huge feature of him. Even more so than Olivia, who's actively mourning, but it seems like Orsino has even more sorrow somehow, because he thrives on it.
Right.
Olivia's trying to distract herself, and Orsino's trying to live in it.
Right.
And the only person was a girl named Allie, and so I said, I'm going to watch her be Orsino, and it was perfect. Everything fit together. And she and the actress who was playing Olivia had been Dogberry and Dogberry's Dogberry's assistant the year before.
Right. Yeah.
And it was fascinating because when they came on stage together for the first time at the end of Act 5, it was like they had that relationship over the years. And
that's cool.
Yeah, so that was the first time I ever really took that big of a, it wasn't even a political or philosophical or anything stance. It was just that I saw Allie in that character.
Right.
And it worked for me, and it worked for the audience, and it worked for everybody. And as long as, you accept it as an actor and the rest of the people, I find that it works.
Exactly. I mean, when I'm looking at Falstaff as a character, I'm not in my head going, okay, how would a man do this? How would a 60-year-old man do this? Because I'm going to psych myself out then. I'm going to start playing to a type. So I go, what's the motive? What's the emotion? I try to find that more. What makes Falstaff tick more so than the gender? Because it's not what's between his legs or his age necessarily that's doing it. It's everything in his brain.
Yeah, and that's why I think did I interrupt your
No.
thought? Yeah, that's why I think that I always say, and it's probably the point of boringness, but you have to get the language before you can get everything else.
Exactly.
If you get the words, you can get the character. If you come to me and say, I'm having, this character is like this, and you tell me a line that says that, we can have a discussion. But I mean, you really, I find that Shakespeare just really made individuals.
Right.
And as long as you play that, it works really well. I mean, for some people, I watch them go to Orange Might, where I've seen some really good productions, but they're very much about doing it, period, in costume.
Yes.
And with dudes as dudes, and they're kind of shouty. But, there are people who just love it, but it's partly for the visuals.
Right.
And there's a place for that. You should see the theater you like. But I find, for me, I like to listen. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's hard to get me out of my nose out of my script. Because I love the voices, and I love it when people actually understand the language, and I don't honestly think that enough modern Shakespeare directors, they start on the outside of how the production should look, or what the production should say about Shakespeare's relationship with the modern world. And I find that if you start from the lines, that you get a much better take on Shakespeare.
I agree. Just being on stage when everyone knows their lines and understands what they're saying, there's just a feeling that comes with it. There's an energy. And it feels amazing, and it usually happens almost near the end of the show, where somehow, we've been doing this for so long, we're coming to an end, but you just reach a certain amount of energy that it's a natural high. It just feels so good, and you're listening to it in your head, and there's a tempo, and it's almost like music to me. Yeah. And it just feels so good to go along with it and just fit in where it needs to be, and you go, so you might even, I could be saying a line one way for so long, but all of a sudden the music has changed somehow in the energy, and it feels right to say it this way now. It just... or
somebody says their line differently, and you react to that, and
exactly.
it's still a valid reaction. Because it's like jazz, I think. You can take one score and improvise it many different ways, right? That's how jazz works, depending upon how much weight you put on a note or a line we don't stress that much about iambic pentameter here, because you can basically do anything you want with stresses in English. There are some you can break it down and pretend that you know what you're doing, but basically a lot of times, and there are entire English degrees in learning your verses, but we're not here for that. We're here for Shakespeare the way I do it, which is that iambic pentameter is basically the way English is when it's spoken well, so you kind of just have to figure out the meaning. Meaning before rhythm, I guess, is what it is for me, which saves you in verse, because one of the hardest things to do is easiest things to do and the hardest things to get over is falling into the end stop trap when you have a line of verse. And to read through the poetry for meaning and not for rhyme.
That was really challenging for me as Puck. That was my first really big role, and you told me, don't rhyme. You told me right off the bat, and I'm like, how am I not supposed to start singing this? It's verse, verse, verse. But I sat down and I worked with it for hours, and I found what worked for me, and it just felt so much better. I could bring so much emotion to it, and it was amazing. It was the best lesson I ever had.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always impressed, and I'm very grateful, and this is for all of the rest of you in the room, about how much work actors put into their parts, because, I occasionally take the St. Crispin's Day speech and read it to explain rhetorical devices and things like that, and to go sit down through a speech and, find the rhetorical devices that Shakespeare's giving you, the hints that Shakespeare's giving you, the archaic words you're kind of have to look up, and to put that all together in a meaning that gives life to your character. That's an impressive amount of work. And
yes.
I'm always amazed. It's kind of like not only a gift to the community when we take these shows out and do it, but it's also a gift to me, because I really do get to sit there and watch the kind of Shakespeare that I want to, and that's amazing.
That's nice.
Okay, so anything else about Falstaff? Or Shakespeare, or before we tune out and start?
I'm honored to play this character, but I'm more so than anything fascinated by it. I think this is one of the most challenging characters I've ever been presented, because he's so dimensional, and every time I run through the show, I'm finding out something else about him.
Did you know much about Falstaff before this? Have you
Honestly, no. So I was coming in blank, and like I said, my first impression was, oh, he's just a clown, But every time I go through it, I'm finding out more and more and more, and he's so dimensional. He's so three-dimensional. It's incredible, and it's a challenge, because I want to do him justice.
Yeah, I've been finding it interesting having to walk people's parts, because this is a play I am not that familiar with, and they're really very interesting.
Yeah.
This is such, and actually, farces are always complex plays, but just the characters, there's even more. There's so much complexity for simple English town.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is cool, because we are all very complex human beings, and Shakespeare reflects that or he puts it in each of his plays. And Merry Wives, because it's such a simple moment, makes that even more real than some of the other plays that are about much more dramatic characters.
Right.
So, I'm really finding this 12th Night used to be my favorite play to direct. But I'm really finding the characters in Merry Wives, they're all touching me in bunches of different ways. And it's really how Shakespeare can take anyone and make them fascinating and multifaceted. And, you look at the relationship between Ford and Mistress Ford and, the pages, you don't get to see it much.
Right, but what's there is
it's like, they obviously, it's like with Homer, you start in media res, you start in the middle of things if you're going to tell a story well.
Yep.
And that's what this is. It's just like one of the first the director I worked with when he cast me as the sea captain in 12th Night, he always said that you don't make plays about the most boring days of someone's life. But this is actually a fairly average day probably in Windsor, except for the introduction of Falstaff.
Right.
But it's still basically it's not a coronation. It's not a breakup. It's not it's just fun. And you get to spend so much time with fun characters. So I think it'll be a really good night of theater for those of you who are coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for talking, Rowan.
Thank you.
Bye, podcast people. Come back on. Oh, have a happy 4th of July. Do not blow anything off. This is for all of you actors, too. Don't blow off parts of your anatomy on the 4th of July because I need you the next day. Alrighty. This is Michelle signing off. We are going to start rehearsal now. Well, Gail's going to warm people up while I have my much belated lunch. Take care.